So this is the hummingbird motif, and I'm going to start off with a pink kind of color that comes from like a very watered down sunset in my tropicals palette. Now if you have woodlands, it'll be a little bit tricky because there's not a lot of pink in there. It has a roxbury you could use with a lot of water. This pinky right here is in the classic, so it has the makings of putting like a purpley color into that to make the sunset if you need it. And so I'm just lightly putting this in, and you can also just use a very light color. It's not like hummingbirds particularly have a pink wing, so you can decide what color you want that to be. And then I feel like I kind of want to put a little bit of orangey tone into this area here. You want to use a tiny little brush if you've got the 5x7 version. I painted this originally in an 8x10, and now I'm going to come in here and just grab the right hand side of this feather and leave some white of the paper in here. And using the tiny tip of this brush to kind of get into those little spaces. Okay, and then moving on with this hummingbird, I'm going to put a little bit of this parrot color. You can use green with a little bit of yellow mixed in. And I'm going to kind of put a background across here that I'll go over the rest of it later. And like I said, you can do your own version because this isn't exactly accurate to hummingbird. It's more of an impression. And we've got a little bit of yellow across there. And then I've got kind of this blue-green. I'm going to test it out. Yeah, I do like how that looks. So I'm going to add this into his body or her body by going down here and kind of across this area. And actually, I probably should have put a little bit down here just to add that in. To come in and kind of dapple. That's just depositing paint without using like a particular line. And I'm going to come in here and define this edge as well. Less is more at the beginning here. I'll come in across the head and dapple that in there. I want to use a little more blue in this area. Really can't see the blue in there because I've got so much of that yellowy green underneath. I can always add another layer in afterward. Let me get some blue here. Kind of put a little bit of blue on top of this green, making it a little more of a blue-green. Just trying to get a little bit of detail. I went out of the line here, and because I'm not going to do background, I can come in and fix that with a clear brush using that to kind of pull it back. Or if you're not able to do it, you can either add a pencil or just don't worry about it. It's not that big a deal. And now I'm going to water down this orange right here. As long as that's dry, I can come in here and just kind of tip my brush. May need to turn your paper to get that. Like so. Now, I do have these stems here that are kind of orange. I'm going to come in here with my hibiscus, or orange with a little bit of brown will work if you've got a classic set. And doing this, I'll have to go around these when I paint the flowers, but I don't want to go over them later. Or if you want to just go over it and then just have a pink or a purple as the background behind them, that's fine too. I just want to be aware of them. That's why I painted them there. And I'm going to grab this green here and pop that in. Take that same green and just go with another dappled layer across this bird, his body, like that. So let's see, we've got this blue-green here that we want to get some detail in these wings. Like so. And I have a little bit of blue over here. I have a gray in here, black that I can make gray, and define this beak a little bit. Like so, and I need to just stay away from that area for a little while and work down below. So we'll take some of this green, and you'll want to really get that fine tip into the ends of these leaves here. Get a nice light green background. I'm just going to come in here a little bit with some fine lines. Like that. So we've got a couple different colors going on. We can always come in here with a clear brush and go over that like I say in all my videos about leaves. It's a very similar process. This one has a little more detail to it. I like this drawing or this painting to be a little more on the detail side than maybe some of my others. And it is good that I kind of moved around this plant, because what happens is then I can come over here and use that color and it'll tie it into my painting, because I wasn't able to match it exactly. Always practice doing your lines. And now this right here is a little bit too defined of a line. And this is wet, so it'll blend in nicely. And now what I was telling you is you can take a clear brush if it's already kind of dry and sort of just barely go over that so that it takes away the line look but leaves the different deposits right where they are of those minerals. And I'm going to dab in a little bit of that other green in here. Clearing my brush, come in here and do the same technique. And now finish this up. I'll let that dry right now, and then I'm going to go over here and do this pink. I've got a lot of paint over here. It's kind of running, so I've got a spot of very light colored purple so I'm going to go over this right now and see if I like that. I think I want a little bit more pink, and that's very wet, so my brush kind of squeezed a little bit, so I can take the end of my paper towel and not even really touch it and sort of siphon some of that water, and only because, and it's fine if it's like that, it will evaporate. I just don't want to get my hand in it because it's so wet. And I will go back into this in a minute with some darker. And I do see that I added like a little bit of like kind of a orangey color in here. Let me put that orange over that. Now I've got my brush cleared off and I'm going to combine that just like I did in all the other leaves. And this will run into the other. I just want you to kind of show you I'm depositing something dark here where those lines are. Put a little bit at the tip of that. So that's one complete flower. I'll show you up close. And of course, you know, that's basically how we're going to do these. I will do a quick version, a fast version of doing the others and show you a few little other details, but that's the basic. We just have to go around and do the exact same thing we did here. All right, so I'm going to do the rest of all of the leaves. Okay, so we have the basics of our leaves done, and now I'm going to add a little bit of tiki to that green just to kind of give it a different color variation in here. Want to make sure that goes into the background. And we've got our clear brush that can kind of go over some of these that are dry. Lifting that pigment there a little bit, and I'll add a shadow in here to separate these two leaves. This needs a little more light green. A little bit of that light green on the end of my brush, so instead of just a clear brush, it has a little bit of light yellow as it's blending, so that looked nice. And now I'll come in here and put a little more dark green, and this one I may kind of add a little of that orange, and underneath we can do like that. And I can come across here and kind of lighten up some of these. Oops. Let's see what that looks like if I pull that back a little bit. Nice. I think on this one I'm going to kind of lighten that up on the top. There we go. Like I said, it's a total stylistic choice. Now we're going to paint the flowers. So now I'm going to work on the flowers here. I've taken the greens away and mixed a few additional pinks. So I'm going to go in here with kind of these light pinks as the undertone. You're welcome to go over some of these areas. We'll just be adding like a purpley pink there. So it's okay to have this color as an undertone. These little dots are just a suggestion to put some additional color. into those areas. Pulling this paint down toward me so I can get right into the tips of these leaves. Going carefully around the little tail of this hummingbird here. So we'll do that for each of these flowers and then come back and add in the details. So now we will go around the head of our hummingbird. We want to be very careful. We want to cover that with appropriate level of paint here so that we get right up to the edge without activating the paint that's next to it, especially right here where we've got his beak. Getting that nectar. Want to make sure that these petals look like they're in the foreground or background according to how it was painted. This is kind of wet, a little bit tacky dry. I have the sunset and reef kind of mixed here. We can try that out. I'm going to come in here and get some of these little areas just with the tip of my brush. And they're just a guideline. You don't have to follow that exactly. As I'm dabbling this in, it's kind of spreading around quite a bit, so we might want to wait until it's a little bit more dry. Or if you like this kind of purpley color overall, then we'll just use that pink as just only the background. So if you need your petal to be a little more wet, you can sort of add a layer on there and then dabble this in. Or if it's too wet, you can wait till it's a little more dry so that this purple will stay put. So over here, this was more dry, so I want to kind of blur out that line so that it doesn't look drawn in. Now we'll go into the tip of this petal here and making sure that it looks like it's in the foreground, because it is. Outline a little bit there, but then pull this pigment over, leaving that pink showing underneath. And now let's get that purple in here. So I'm going to pull some of that away. Make sure to keep that in the background. And now I'm going to come in here and put more purple in here. Saturate that a little bit. And because the rest of this is more purple and that is more of a lighter pink, I'll just kind of come across there. And I don't like how that line is so stark, so I'm kind of loosening the pigment and then I'm going to pull some of it off onto my paper, like so. And I'm going to take a little bit of pink and sort of add that in to that area. While that's wet, I'll just kind of come in here and grab some of those details. And now that this is dry, I'm going to add the details in there, like so. And on these, I do have a few extra textures that aren't drawn in, so you can just kind of make those up as you go. And like I said before, you want to pay attention to how dry or wet it is on how much it's going to spread or not spread. So it's a nice little balance. Now this one we painted a while ago, so I'm going to go over this with a little bit of water just to kind of activate the area. And be ever so careful around that hummingbird beak. come across here, blend that in a little bit, and I want to put a nice little shadow behind this, and you want to be very, very careful, as I've said a few times, just to kind of make sure that we get the idea of the foreground and background. Now I'm tapping a little bit of orange into the centers here, just to draw attention to those. So I'm adding this detail here just to kind of make it look like these petals are kind of rounding or have dimension to them. A little more realistic.